just to add that we also are grateful. So let us have a successful meeting, and thank you, President.
Yes, thank you very much, President Janil. At this time, we'll have the welcome and introduction of members of visiting clubs and guests on this platform. And I'll call on President-elect Junior from the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. PE Junior, over to you.
I am on President Paul. Good night to you all. And thank you very much, President Paul. Let me just welcome all those clubs that are with us tonight to our joint meeting with our daughter club, Kiwanis Club of New Kingston. I'd like to just take the time to welcome those clubs that are with us from overseas, those clubs that are with us from Division 1, 4, 3, East, West, and Central, our own division. Tonight, I'd like to special welcome to DLGE Sharon and our delegation from the New Kingston, Kiwanis Club of New Kingston tonight.
Thank you.
We are going to be doing things a little in the interest of time tonight. We are going to be doing things a little differently tonight. Tonight, we are going to ask all those clubs that would like to bring greetings to do so on the chat, and we will recognize you as soon as we see it. We want to welcome also our special guest speaker tonight, who will be presenting climate change and your health, Dr. Georgiana Gordon-STRACHAN. I didn't see if she was on yet, but yes, very special welcome to you, ma'am.
Yes,
and I hope
Dr. Strong is on.
He's on.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Without any further ado, I'll just turn you back over to President Paul so we can get on with the meeting. Thank you for coming, you all. Those from overseas, our SLPs that are on as well, those Kiwanians, those prospective Kiwanians and non-Kiwanians as well. Thank you for coming. I sure hope you'll enjoy this meeting tonight. Very interesting topic. Thank you, and back over to you, President Paul.
Yes, thank you very much, PE Junior. Well, at this time, I don't have any apologies for absence from the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. I'm not sure if Secretary DLG will receive any. If not, I will ask President Janelle on the New Kingston.
No, I didn't receive any, President Paul.
Yes, thank you very much. President Janelle.
Thank you, President Paul.
Yes, we are at apologies for absence.
President GL, you're not hearing President Paul?
No, oh, I thought he heard. I said that, thank you, President. I said that I have not received any apologies from my side.
Okay, then. No, I didn't.
We have apologies for second VP, Sophia, Chairman.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any other apologies for New Kingston?
The second VP, Sophia. You heard me, Press?
Yes, we heard it, yes, Sandra, but I think there's a competing noise in your background. But duly noted. We'll move on to the recognition of birthdays and anniversaries. And for the Kiwanis Club of Kingston, I'll call on VP Newton.
Thank you, President Paul. Good night, everyone. Tonight I'm going to follow in P. Junior's footstep and be very brief. We have two birthdays for this week, and they're both on Friday, the 4th of March. And one is Kiwanian Cartwright, and Garth, and the other one is none other than the one and only one that God ever made like that, PDT Ralston Nunes. So that's it for this week, unless there's someone who is celebrating some other special occasion. And you'd like to, through President Paul and President Janelle, open your mic and share with us. Other than that, it's back to you, President. No one? Okay, it's back to you, President Paul and President Janelle.
President Paul, this is PE from Kiwanis Club of New Kingston. I do have some birthdays.
Yes, go ahead, PE. Yes.
Yeah, so happy birthday to our case sisters from the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston who will be celebrating their birthdays this week. We have Nikisha Walters, Rosanne Peter Williams, Shirley Shang Faubrun, and Natalie Moore. So happy birthday to all our case sisters. Hope you have a wonderful day and a fantastic year ahead. Over to you, President. Paul.
Yes, thank you very much, PE, Audrey. And we'll have our Kiwanis education by DP Valerie. DP Valerie.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, oh there. My video, yes, I'm right here.
Yes, lovely.
Oh, okay, President Paul, President Janelle, members at the respective head tables, distinguished Kiwanians in the audience, SLPs and guests. For this month, the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston has decided to focus on membership. So today, in the interest of time, I'm just going to be speaking very briefly on membership. We have quite a few new members in the club and we have prospects coming on. And for even the longer standing members, you know, I don't call you old members, for the longer standing members, it bears repetition sometimes. Kiwanis International is a global community of club which consists of members serving the children of the world. I think we maybe are about at almost 600,000 members worldwide now. Who are members? Members are the lifeblood and the heartbeat of Kiwanis. We are the hands and feet of Kiwanis. What we say, what we do, how we behave, it impacts Kiwanis. It impacts our members, it recommends or it discourages our prospects. We are the face of Kiwanis. In fact, members are Kiwanis. It could not exist or it could not thrive without its members. What do the members do? We do approximately 150,000 service projects each year, positively impacting the lives of children, fighting disease, poverty, and we extend our assistance to the elderly and wherever a need exists. How? How do we ensure Kiwanis' continuity? We must recruit new members. We must retain existing members. We must motivate and encourage all members. And we need to train our members as knowledge builds self-confidence, esteem, and growth eventually. You know, Tiger Woods said something when they interviewed him. How have you done so well at golf? And he said, I prepare. Tell me 3 things. And he said, I prepare, I prepare, I prepare. So Kiwanians, we have to train our members because our club members hold the power. Members vote to elect club officers and directors. Nobody else can do it. We vote on delegates to conventions, divisional council meetings. We vote on amendments to bylaws, changes in club dues, and financial matters affecting our club. In fact, members are the watchdogs of our clubs. In fact, we can say we are the watchdog of Kiwanis. So we want membership in Kiwanis to be a long and rewarding experience. Recognition and appreciation, of course, sweetens labor, but that's not why we're here. But it's always good to say a big thank you to our members when they go over and beyond the call of duty. So, fellow Kiwanians, let us respect and honor the role we play as members in this awesome organization, because that's the only way we can ensure its longevity. More for the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston in the ensuing 4 weeks on membership. Thank you.
DP Valerie, I now
Yes.
invite or thank you. I now invite our chair, Dr. Andrew Burton.
Not hearing you,
President.
President frozen.
To do the introduction of.
Oh, I could just come in now. Evening, everyone. I'm Andrew Burton. The pleasure is mine to introduce tonight Dr. Gordon.
Chairman Andrew, we're not hearing you. We're not. Chairman Andrew?
You're not hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you now. Could
Hear me?
you restart, please?
Okay,
We
sure.
lost him for a while. We lost him for a while.
That's
Can
for a
you
while, yes.
restart,
Okay.
please?
My apologies. All right. Well, let me know if it chips out again. I said it was my pleasure tonight to introduce to those here, Dr. Gordon-Strachan. In my field of medicine and in research, Dr. Gordon-Strachan is a very important name. She specializes in epidemiology and health policy, health services research, research methods, climate change, and health and biostatistics. She holds a PhD in biochemistry from the University of the West Indies, Mona, a Master's of Science in Health Policy Planning and Financing from the University of London, and a Bachelor's of Science in Biochemistry and Zoology from University of the West Indies. She's a member of the Essential National Health Research Committee, the ENHRC, in Jamaica, which has now developed a national research agenda and is working on a national health research policy as part of Jamaica's Vision 2030 strategy. She chairs the subcommittee on health systems research for the COVID-19 National Research Agenda. And of note, she is the 2019 recipient of the Vice Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Research. She presently holds the titles of one, Director of the Tropical Metabolism Research Unit, that's TMRU, located at UWI-Mona. That's in the Caribbean Institute for Health Research, CAIHR, at you as mentioned. And she's a program director / regional investment plan for the Caribbean regional track of the pilot program of climate resilience. She's here to share with us today on climate change and your health. So assist me in inviting her and welcoming her, Dr. Georgiana Gordon-Strachan.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very, very much. I want to start by acknowledging the presidents, President for Kiwanis Club of Kingston, Mr. Paul Peart. I understand that the Kiwanis Club of Kingston was the first Kiwanis club in Jamaica, and that we're celebrating 58 years of service this year. So congratulations to the Kiwanis Club. And I also want to just acknowledge the president of the New Kingston Kiwanis Club, Ms. Janelle Allen. I have friends who are members of the New Kingston Club. Aldry Henry Lee is here. And also Erica Horton, who I think is one of your vice presidents, President Allen. So thank you. And also thank you for the opportunity to do this presentation. I'm going to share my slides, or at least attempt to share my slides.
You have co-hosting privileging.
Right, just trying to find, 1 second. Okay, here we go. Okay, so thanks again for the kind introduction, and also thanks for the opportunity to do this presentation. I'm going to be talking about climate change and health, and I'm going to just do a brief overview of what climate change is. I know that most of you already know, but I want us to be all on the same footing for this discussion. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the impact of climate change on health. I'm going to be focusing on extreme heat in this presentation, and then I'll close off with some thoughts on what we can do to reduce the impact. So the existence and survival of any organism is predicated on the ability of the environment in which this organism lives to provide for their basic needs, as well as to provide conditions which are suitable for growth and reproduction. Unabated climate change threatens this existence at the planetary level. And for this reason, it has been regarded as the biggest global health threat of the 21st century. And this designation was by the Lancet Commission on Climate Change and Health. Now, obviously, this designation is quite damning. So the Lancet Commission thought that they would rebrand it. And the rebranding is that it actually provides the greatest global health opportunity of the 21st century. And this is so because we're actually given a little time within which we can make some changes. So future projections represent an unacceptably high and potentially catastrophic risk to human health. So that's just a little preamble. But what exactly is climate change? Climate change is actually a naturally occurring phenomenon in which the Earth goes through cycles of warming and cooling. But these cycles and this phenomenon actually happens very slowly, incrementally over millennia. Over the past century, there has been an anomalous increase in global temperature. And this has given rise to an accelerated and unprecedented climate change. We looked at the data and we came up with one obvious reason for this unprecedented change. And this was due to what we call anthropogenic activities. And these are activities related to human activity. So it is widely accepted that greenhouse gas emissions from human activities such as industries, have contributed significantly to the increase in this global temperature. The biggest culprit is the increase in what we call greenhouse gases, and these are, and include, carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and methane. The unfortunate thing about these greenhouse gases is that they have very long-lasting effects. So that even if we stopped all emissions this very minute, we would still have to contend with the residual residence times of these greenhouse gases, which will continue to have an impact on global warming and climate change. If you look at the little table over here, I'll just pull one. Carbon dioxide increased over the last century by 40%. Half of it is usually removed within 5 to 15 years, and another third remains for over 100 years. So you understand that this is not a small issue. So from the perspective of the planet, I'm just going to have you focus in on these two little pictures right here. It was taken by the USA Geological Survey, and it looks at Muir Glacier and Inlet, Alaska. And the picture is taken from the same spot in 1906 and then in 2004. In 1906, you can see the permafrost and the glaciers here. In 2004, it looks like you should take off your clothes, put on your swimsuit, and have a nice swim in icy cold water. So what we've been noticing is that we've been having many warmer days and warmer nights. We've been having longer drought periods, shorter rainy seasons, but more intense episodes of rainfall. Ocean acidification is happening because the ocean does a great job of absorbing some of these greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide. And of course, obviously, there's also an increase in ocean temperatures. Now, because the ocean's capacity is fixed, if you add more water to it by the melting of glaciers, what happens is that the level of the sea will naturally rise. So Sea level rise is one of the other effects. And this is at the planetary level. But what can we say about our own climate change here in Jamaica? And there is a study that was commissioned by the Planning Institute of Jamaica and conducted by the Climate Studies Working Group at the University of the West Indies in Mona. And this report, called The State of the Jamaican Climate Report 2015, can be downloaded from the PIOJ's website if you want to have a more in-depth look, a deep dive into what's going to happen to us. So for this, they compared the historical trend of 1986 to 2005, and they looked at changes in temperature, rainfall, sea level, and hurricanes. I'm going to go through these really quickly. So everybody knows the story. The projection for temperature for Jamaica is that it's going to increase. So that is a short story. If we look at the projection up to 2100, what we see is that the range that we expected to increase is from 0.82 to 3.09. And this is mean annual temperature increase in degrees Celsius. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, but if you think about your own body temperature and what is considered normal body temperature, if your body temperature goes above 37 degrees by 3 degrees, you have a fever, right? So this is a big deal. The projection for rainfall for Jamaica is that we're going to have less rainfall. It's going to get drier and drier, and by 2100, it is anticipated that it will be drier by 21%. Now, I know that most of us won't be around at this time, but I know that as a service club, you think far forward into the future to make sure that you mitigate and adapt to become more resilient to any kind of threats that might be lurking in the background. So just to give a demonstration, in 2019, we had a drought, and this is a Mona Reservoir near capacity. Obviously not in 2019, but in May 2019, the Mona Reservoir was only at 27% capacity. And as you can see right here, it's really very low, okay? So these are some of the things we have to brace for. The projection for sea level rise, I thought I'd show you this one. I think most of you will recognize this schematic. It was done by the Mona GIS. Dr. Paris Louayi is the head of that unit. And this is the Oceana Hotel, or Old Oceana Hotel, or also called the Oceana Building. Can you recognize this building? This is the Bank of Jamaica. And as you can see, as sea level rises, it is expected that the sea will encroach onto the land, and we won't have that lovely space in front of Oceana or Bank of Jamaica anymore. Are you hearing me?
Somebody's mic was open, sorry.
Okay, all right, let me go ahead. I'm in the wrong direction. Okay, so hurricanes and tropical storms, the projection is that we won't have a change, or we may actually have a slight decrease in the frequency of hurricanes. However, the maximum speed of these hurricanes will increase, and the amount of rainfall associated with these hurricanes will also increase. So we expect that we will have an 80% increase in the frequency of categories 4 and 5 hurricanes. So we're expecting more extreme events. So from a national perspective, climate change and natural disasters are identified as a major challenge to our economic growth, our wealth creation, and our poverty eradication programs. Between 2001 and 2011, Jamaica experienced 11 storms, and the damage amounted to $122 million US. If we look back at Hurricane Ivan, which happened in 2004, what we will find is that the dislocation caused by this hurricane caused us to have to adjust our GDP by 8%. The results of these natural disasters or extreme events is a heavy fiscal burden, which causes a reallocation of resources from development to restoration, and a heightened risk for increasing our indebtedness. The unfortunate thing about this is that the poor are disproportionately affected. So to summarize, the projection for Jamaican climate to 2100 is that we'll have higher temperatures, less rainfall and more droughts, more extreme events, for example, in Mobane in November of 2017, there was a flood. The rain just came, and in 4 hours, Montego Bay received 1 month's worth of rainfall. So the place was flooded. And obviously we will have sea level rise, and we will expect more intense hurricanes. So that is our summary. So let's then look at how this overall picture affects us and affects our health. This schematic that's running right now is from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and it starts with the core elements. So more extreme weather, rising sea level, increases in carbon dioxide, and rising temperatures. I won't go through all of it, but I want you to just focus on some of the illnesses that we expect to be exacerbated by climate change. So severe weather would cause more injuries and fatalities and will have impacts on our mental health. Air pollution, asthma, cardiovascular diseases. Changes in vector ecology, for us, the most important vector disease is dengue fever. We expect that we will have increasing allergens, and this will cause increases in respiratory events such as asthma. Water quality will be impacted, and this can cause us to be at risk for leptospirosis, which is one of the diseases that is of importance to the Jamaican population. If we have water and food in scarce supply because of a drought situation, then we can expect that our food will be less secure. So we'll have food insecurity, and that would put us at risk for malnutrition. Now, if we have environmental degradation, and if sea level rise encroaches on the land and removes habitable spaces for lives and livelihoods, then obviously we will have some migration of people from the spaces that they would normally occupy into other places. And then there are the obvious, the heat-related illnesses, which can cause death and can lead to cardiovascular failure. So just to give you a brief overview of how climate affects our health, and I'm going to use what is called the life course approach or the life cycle approach. Now, we already said that climate change will result in an unprecedented threat to our health and to our development. And we also said before that the most basic building blocks of any natural environment really are the environment that it is in, the weather in the short term, and the climate in the long term. So I've chosen some select impacts of climate change on health using the same life cycle approach. So let's start with pregnancy and pre-birth. And that is affected through extreme events and other events. Childhood and early life, that's also affected. Adolescence is affected. Adulthood and middle age also affected, and the elderly also affected. So I'll go through these very quickly. So for pre-birth pregnancy, the effects are preterm births and what we call neural tube defects. One study concluded that climate change will increase the risk of maternal mortality, birth complications, and will cause poorer reproductive health outcomes. And this will happen especially in poorer tropical countries. For our own country, Jamaica, we measure our maternal mortality, and maternal mortality is, in simpler terms, the deaths of women during pregnancy or after pregnancy, or deaths related to pregnancy and delivery. So for Jamaica, our maternal mortality ratio is 101 per 100,000 live births. Our sustainable development goals, we've set to reduce this to 70 by 2030. So where are we now? Our line is still going up, it's not going down. And if climate change is added to this, we might expect that our maternal mortality ratio or our maternal deaths will increase. So we wouldn't meet our 2030 SDG or Sustainable Development Goal. Now, there are two conditions which are of great importance to us in Jamaica, two conditions in pregnancy, and these are preeclampsia and eclampsia. Eclampsia is the leading cause of maternal deaths in Jamaica is hypertensive related disorders, and these disorders include preeclampsia and eclampsia. And there's a study that shows that climate change will exacerbate the risk of preeclampsia. So if this research is correct, it then means to us that Jamaican pregnant women will be more vulnerable to climate change, and an increase in temperature could affect our maternal mortality ratio and increase our risk for preeclampsia, especially if pregnant women are exposed to elevated temperatures at certain points during their pregnancies. So their first trimester or their third trimester. This is what research has shown. So for us, our preterm birth rate is 10.2%. And preterm birth rate refers to births that happen before the baby comes to term, so before the 9-month period. And for us, it's 10.2%. And it is implicated in a lot of our preterm or deaths in children, right? So it is actually the leading cause of death in children under 5 years old. So we need to look into this, to research this a little bit more, to see if what was found in the US, which was that common environmental exposures exacerbated climate change, and they were significantly associated with severe adverse pregnancy outcomes. So we need to look into this to see if this applies to us. And the severe adverse pregnancy outcomes include preterm births, low birth weight, and stillbirths. So I like this particular example that I'm going to show you right now, that I'm showing you now. And it's actually looking at a condition called Spina Bifida, which is a neural tube defect, which we found an increase in after Hurricane Gilbert. And this increase was associated with a reduction in folate, which is a vitamin B, consumption in women during what we call the periconception period, and peri just means around the time of conception. We found this in that it occurred 11 to 18 months after Hurricane Gilbert. So what was happening there was that women were not getting, naturally we would get it because we eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, or we're not getting their adequate supplies of folate. And so that resulted in the babies being born with a deformation called Spina Bifida. So in childhood and early life, we're always thinking about, for childhood, we're always thinking about nutrition and undernutrition and malnutrition. Increases in temperature, it's projected that these will cause a reduction in global crop yields. The ones that are of most importance to us are wheat and rice, because we depend heavily on these. We import a lot of wheat, we import a lot of rice. For us, our childhood malnutrition has remained very low. And the 2019 report from the Planning Institute of Jamaica has it at 1%. So we don't have a problem at this point in time with childhood malnutrition, or certainly not a problem to the extent that we had some years, many years ago in the 60s and 70s. But children are also susceptible to diarrheal diseases like gastroenteritis. For the adolescent period, one study showed that an increase in 1.5 degrees in global temperature resulted in injury deaths. And these 84% of these injury deaths happened in young men during the adolescent period and during the adulthood period. And another study showed that injuries and self-harm among adolescents was associated with hotter climate. So as we move from the adolescent into adulthood and into the elderly, another study also showed that it is related, the injuries, the impact that was shown, or the correlation between injuries and climate carried through with this group. And they found that intentional injuries, including self-harm and assault, was significantly increased when temperatures were increased. Another area that I want us to look at is heat stress. And under heat stress, we already know that the elderly population is vulnerable, but other people are vulnerable as well. It impacts our labor productivity. And one study in China showed that global warming would intensify heat stress and become an occupational health issue. I'm going to show you a little bit about some work that I did for Jamaica, and Shelley McFarlane is here. She was also a co-author on that particular piece of work that we did, and we will look at labor productivity for Jamaica and project it into 2100. Now, we hear it all the time. The Ministry of Health keeps telling us that we have to lead a healthy lifestyle, that chronic non-communicable diseases are a major cause of death. So we are aware of this. But one of the things we also need to be aware of is that climate change has been shown to exacerbate cardiovascular diseases, right? So it's shown that the air pollutants, such as carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and so on, are associated with hospital admissions and mortality due to cardiovascular disease. Another study that was done, which I find really interesting, looked at chronic kidney disease. And this was done in Taiwan. And what they did was they followed up over time patients who had been diagnosed with heat injuries. And they compared them with patients who had not had a heat injury or no history of a heat injury. And what they found was that chronic kidney disease in the heat injury group was twice as much as that in the group that did not have a heat injury. They showed that the risk of developing end-stage renal disease, and for the clinicians in the room can correct me, but end-stage renal disease is associated with, most people with end-stage renal disease, a lot of people who have this condition are managed by medicine, but also many of them also need to have dialysis, right? And kidney transplants and so on. And this was significantly higher among those who had a heat stroke. So for us in Jamaica, we spoke a little bit about vector-borne diseases, and you will recall that in 2018 to 2019, we had a dengue epidemic. So dengue is considered to be what we call hyperendemic in Jamaica, and this is because we've had so many outbreaks in such quick succession. Our outbreaks are happening at almost once every 2 years. And work done before by Professor Chen showed that the mosquitoes, the Aedes mosquitoes, which are the vectors for dengue fever, at higher temperatures, they have a shorter life cycle, which means that they get to maturity quicker and that they breed more. So higher temperatures are associated with higher incidence or more cases of dengue fever. So this is just a graphical representation to show you what we're saying, that we actually are seeing it almost every 2 years. This is the source of this information comes from the Ministry of Health, and they're looking at dengue from 1986 to 2019. And as you can see, the earlier years, we were not having outbreaks and epidemics of dengue fever as we are in the later years. There's a cost to all of this. And again, from the Ministry of Health, they costed the admission to hospital for an adult who had to be hospitalized with dengue fever and for a child who had to be hospitalized with dengue fever. And the costs are here. For one adult, it was $116,249.40. And for a child, it was about 213,000 Jamaican dollars. I said before that the elderly were particularly vulnerable, and I want to emphasize this point and demonstrate the point by talking about a heat wave that happened in Western Europe in August of 2003. And there they estimated that they had 70,000 excess deaths. And these 70,000 excess deaths were among the elderly and was attributed to the heat wave. So I want to change gears a little bit now and look at our situation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about heat stress. And I want to focus on labor capacity and sports. So heat stress occurs when the body is unable to cool itself and to regulate a normal body temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. Now, what happens when this increase, then the body gets too hot, is that our inner core, the temperature of our inner core begins to rise and blood is diverted to our skin. Just give me 1 second, I'm just trying to get my dog to be quiet. So I'm trying to talk above the dog. I hope you can still hear me. So what happens is that the blood is diverted from your inner core, so like from your heart and your essential organs to your skin so that you can be cooled. And what happens when that happens, certain things can happen. You can lose concentration, you can faint, and in extreme cases, you can die or become disabled. So it may be caused by external factors. High temperature, high humidity, and strenuous exercise include some of the factors that may cause heat stress. So we already said that we expect our future climate to be hotter and to be drier. So we can expect that we will have more heat exposure. And who is affected by this? Who are the most vulnerable? Our athletes, the elderly, pregnant women, the disabled, our outdoor workers or laborers, and of course, our children. So I'm going to just do a quick 2 slides on some work that we did where we tried to estimate the effect that heat stress would have on labor capacity. And we used 2 different models. And these are models of climate change. So RCP 2.6, you don't have to remember what it means. It's just saying that at 2.6, we expect that a lot of measures have been taken to try to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we're having a better climate in the future. 8.5 means that we're having a much worse climate in the future. So they've built models and scenarios around these, what they call representative concentration pathways, but don't have to remember that. Just remember that 2.6 is not so bad, 8.5 pretty bad. So labor capacity is actually defined as a working time that one requires to safely perform labor under environmental heat stress. Now, under normal conditions, labor capacity at 100% is 8 hours, is a regular 8-hour day work. So we estimated labor capacity using a process called the wet bulb global temperature, and I'll say WBGT for short. And we used a method that was done in China, where they looked at heavy manual labor. And heavy manual labor over here, workload is 4. And the threshold they used was 75%. So we use the same thing. So what this means is a labor capacity of 100% means that you get a full 8-hour day work from your laborers or from your workers. 75% means that you only get 75% of work. So instead of working for 8 hours, you work for, I think, 6 hours. So what we did was we projected into the future using climate projection models done by the Climate Studies Group. And our reference period here is the decade, well, it's not quite a decade, from 1995 to 2003. And as you can see, we only had 3 months during that decade where the WBGT went to more than 26%. I mean, to more than 26, sorry. However, as we got to the 20s and further on, the numbers increased. So for 2020 to 2029, we had 26 months that had WGBTs above 26%, which means that the work capacity was reduced by less than 75%, less than or equal to 75%. So let me pull your attention then to the next one, which is the RCP, which I was saying to you is not a good outcome. It means that nothing or not much mitigation and adaptation and efforts to reduce climate change were implemented. And as you can see, if you look at this one, which is the one which is 2.5, 2.6, you'll notice that there is a clustering of the months where you will only get a 75% work capacity out of your employees. Once we use the 8.5, you will see that this clustering is gone out the window. And by 2050, we're seeing straight throughout the year where the months are above work capacity, WBGT of 26, and therefore a reduced work capacity of less than 75%. So let's switch gears a little bit and look at heat stress and sports. All major sports are affected by climate change, and this is caused by extreme heat. Now, I really love cricket, and I really, really, really like this picture because the West Indies look just so great in this picture. We're holding the trophy, the ICC 2019 trophy, and everybody is happy. However, cricket is threatened by climate change. The Ashes series of 2018, some of you will recall that England's captain had to be hospitalized during the 5th test because of heat exhaustion. On that occasion, the Sydney cricket grounds was as hot as 57 degrees Celsius. Cricket has since adopted an extreme heat policy, and umpires can actually stop play. And this has led to cancellation of cricket games and threatens the test and one-day formats of the game. Tennis is not immune to this, and the Tennis Open, US Open of 2018, Djokovic and 4 other players retired from the tournament due to extreme heat. So both the Australian Open and the US Open have implemented heat rules to protect players, umpires, and ball boys from heat exposure. World Cup Football 2014 heralded a new phenomenon for World Cup games. Heat forced the first cooling break of a World Cup football competition. And this happened in Brazil, in a match between Mexico and the Netherlands. So I'm going to close off with some thoughts on how we may reduce the impact of climate change on our health. And the first thing we have to do is to try to be aware that it exists. And in being aware that it exists, we need to think about how we might measure it and monitor it. So we need to set up some surveillance systems for monitoring extreme heat and heat stress. We also need to not just set them up, but we need to set up and develop early warning systems for the public, which are related to these increased temperatures, so that they will know when to stay inside. We already have some of those: when to stay inside, when to go out, when we may have a we may be at high risk for dengue outbreak, what public health measures need to be taken once we can model these diseases and develop these early warning systems. And to also really think about heat stress by measuring our WBGT. In terms of labor capacity, we can expect reduced work capacity for manual laborers. And this is important for us to be aware of. And it means that we may have to have a look at revising our occupational health and safety laws and guidelines to ensure that our workers are protected. By introducing things like cooling breaks, hydration breaks, we may actually have to halt work. We have to think about how we stagger work hours. We also need to teach public how to understand the public warnings about heat stress. And we also need to be aware of the fact that if we reduce working hours, there are lots of implications to that. At the most granular level, the laborer who is earning a minimum wage, reducing his work or her working hours affects their livelihoods. So from the perspective of sports, we need to start thinking more seriously about the guidelines for these heat rules, and we need to expand them to all outdoor sports. We also need to educate our athletes in training to understand heat stress and how to prevent it. And they can also work out their WBGT before starting their training, so they can get a better understanding of how they will be affected by heat stress. So I think that this whole climate change and health, like the Lancet, provides us with a great opportunity. And it gives us an opportunity for innovation and action. Some of the things that we need to do, we need to identify the people and the communities that are at risk. We need to do a more thorough assessment of labor capacity for manual construction workers, farmers, athletes, land surveyors even. We need to think about setting up and utilizing disease early warning systems, and some work has already been done for this with dengue. And we need to think about how we would build the resilience of our health systems and our healthcare facilities as we prepare for extreme events. Now, there are some co-benefits to climate change, or to mitigating or to stopping or to adapting to climate change. And one really important one is that if we clean the air, then we'll have less respiratory problems. So there are some co-benefits. And in order to capture these co-benefits, we need to measure them. We also need to strengthen our capacity to quantify our future risks so that the health sector will be able to be more resilient and to bounce back from shocks caused by climate change. Now, communication and community participation cannot be overemphasized. So we need to really think about how we communicate these messages and how we get our communities to participate and to rally around this call for being more climate smart. So I'll close off with just a few thoughts about what you can do. You can lobby for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, because that's what's causing the problem in the first place. Now, we all know that small countries like Jamaica contribute almost a minuscule amount to the overall greenhouse gas emission. But the fact is that we're the most vulnerable. So we can't sit and blame and point fingers. We have to work to make ourselves more resilient. The transport sector contributes about 25% to global greenhouse gases. We need to lobby for smarter transport systems. You can do this in your own homes or in your own workspaces. Greening of your space is a very important thing, and it's easy to do. You can plant trees, you can do plants, and they help to absorb and take some of the carbon dioxide and the greenhouse gas emissions out of our atmosphere. Avoid extreme heat as much as possible. Avoid extreme heat. It's recommended that we eat a more plant-based diet. It's not saying that you must become a vegetarian. It's just saying that you should diversify your plate with some more plant-based foods. And if you can afford it, certainly invest in renewable energy options. And of course, I couldn't come here without telling you to practice a healthy lifestyle. The Ministry of Health would be quite upset with me if I didn't fly that flag on this occasion. So closing remarks, climate change is real. Jamaica is highly vulnerable. Climate change is a development issue which can derail our national development plans. Climate considerations must be an integral part of our lives and our plans. And we must aim to be climate resilient so that we can withstand the threats which climate change will impose on us, especially those threats which will impact our health. Thank you very much.
Dr. Gordon-Strachan, thank you so much. And wow, the vulnerability of women as a result of climate change, that to me was unbelievable. You know, just to think about the entire influence on social and environmental health consequences is just a genuine eye-opener. At this time, we will now invite our participants to ask any questions. Please raise your hand so I can recognize you. Okay, I see DP Valerie, please go ahead.
Yes, good evening, everybody. This was a very interesting presentation, Dr. Gordon-Strachan, but I wanted to ask you about the increasing density of housing. We are putting up, you just mentioned more green spaces. And I sighed when I saw that comment, because not only are we putting up 3- and 4-story, these apartment buildings all over the town, but they are 8 and 9 and 10, and they're dense and they're removing the green spaces. So, and furthermore, not even that, I thought that there would be some kind of law to have them all solar equipped, but that is not the case. So I would just like your take on it, having just encouraged us to deal with more green spaces. What are we doing with the government? What is the
Well,
government? What's the lobby?
Right. So the lobby is the Kiwanis Club.
Boy, we try, but I mean, we need stronger people like you with the knowledge.
Well, I think that there has been a move to try to, there's a big move towards urban green spaces. And there are ideas and countries which have implemented these things, countries which have more concrete density than we do. So you're absolutely right. One of the challenges I have also with these buildings is that I don't know how the ventilation works because the windows are all sealed. So that is a whole other indoor ambient temperature quality. This, I think, is something that we have to lobby for, and I'm in complete agreement with you. I know there is a move towards it, but you're absolutely right. The counter argument is that our population has increased and we have not provided good housing solutions, but I don't know that this is the best housing solution. I agree with you, DP Valerie.
Yes, Dr. Gordon, have a dream to the country. When I drive, when I leave Bog Walk and I'm going up St. Anne's and I see the amount of land, unutilized, beautiful spaces, rather than chucking up all of these high-rise buildings in Kingston, it is abhorrent. It is terrible.
I agree. I agree.
Try and help us.
Thank you for your question. I now invite our DP Claudette with her question.
Yes, Dr. Gordon-Strachan. And I hope now. Right now, I think we have some surveillance systems for monitoring extreme heat when they take our temperature. but do you think a siesta system such as that in Spain and other countries would help our workers who have to be out there in the noonday sun working? Is that something that could work?
I think that could work. I think that could work, and we may be forced into doing something like that because it would just be too difficult to work during those times because it's just too hot. So I think that will work. Other ways that we might consider is staggering our work hours. So we'll probably start much earlier and end earlier, or start later. But these are considerations that we have to make and we have to think about. The siesta system works, but that's culturally appropriate. One of the challenges with the siesta system here, I think, is that many people don't live as close to work as in other communities, as in maybe Spain, certainly Greece, and some of the other countries that actually have siestas, because people actually go home, rest, have a late lunch or have tea, and then go back to work. For us, a lot of our population, especially in the urban setting of Kingston, live in St. Catherine, so it may not be as feasible in our setting, but there are certainly other options that we can explore.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent questions. Are there any other questions at this time?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
Dr. Strong, Gordon-Strachan, could you say a little bit about water in terms of the fact that extra increased temperatures is going to affect our water supply? You did talk about that, but could you mention something about the viability of using desalination plants? Because I think other countries in the Caribbean are also doing that, and as how to that might also help to mitigate the problem. Thanks.
Right. So several countries in the Caribbean already use desalination plants. Antigua is one that has been using it for a long time. I know Barbados is going towards that now because, as you know, you may or may not know, Barbados doesn't have any rivers, so their water comes from underground aquifers. So there is a serious issue around water. Desalination is an option. One of the challenges I've I know that is with desalination is that it utilizes a lot of energy. So, but I'm sure by now our scientists and engineers may have found more energy efficient ways to desalinate seawater. But I know that the process is energy consuming. It is something that we could consider. It is something that we can consider. It may be something that we will have to consider because we have a lot of ocean. We have more sea than we have land, right? And I see somebody very special to me with a hand up.
Hi, Dr. Gordon-Strachan. It is, I had locked up my keys, car keys and office keys in the office and wondered if I would have made it here. Well, I made it before many people. And it is a delight to listen to you.
Thank you.
You did mention, you showed a slide in the early part with the prediction for the Bank of Jamaica and Oceana Hotel. But we have been thinking about the renewal of the city. It doesn't look like a very prospective thing to do, even though Sydney Harbour is one of the great attractions, and we were hoping that one day our Kingston Harbour would enjoy something like that. But with climate change, you're predicting some doom. How you think that the efforts that they are doing right now would compensate for it, or they're not doing enough?
Well, I think part of the challenge is that it's not a Caribbean problem or a Jamaican problem. It is a global problem. And so we have to depend on our global partners to help with the reduction. If you listened to or heard any of the COP26 meeting that happened in Glasgow, there is an Australian girl who says blah, 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 blah. In her opinion, not enough is being done. And I completely agree with her. I think I think part of the solution is knowing, right? So if we know that this is what is expected to happen, then we can make plans to maybe move our harbor, beautiful Kingston Harbor, beautiful natural Kingston Harbor, maybe have the boardwalk a little bit more removed from the sea or from the sea, maybe have it a little bit removed, or have a much wider boardwalk with lots more space and beautiful spaces for families to walk and to enjoy just being in downtown Kingston. That's one of my favorite places to be. I'm really looking forward to the renewal, and I'm very encouraged by some of the work that's already been done. I saw the wall that the artists painted, and that was just amazing. I was so pleased, and I hope that the effort will continue.
And just the other angle to it was the Palisados Road. Okay. Remember when, I think it was 2004, but I don't want to be accurate on, I need to be accurate on that. The time when they started to put those huge boulders, the alternatives seem to have been so expensive that they utilized the boulders, and these came from the appropriate places, I suppose. And I don't think it has been tested yet, but that, I don't think they were thinking of global warming at that time, but it is one of the steps that you could see they are looking forward, so that that road is preserved for a little longer. But the global warming that you're reminding us about is surely going to be a threat to that. They'll have to do much more too.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you. It was really a delight listening to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, DP Earl. Okay, so we are unable to address any more questions due to the time constraint, so apologies there. I now invite our PE Aldry to give the vote of thanks.
Good evening, fellow Kiwanians and guests. Our time has been very well spent. It is my pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks, our profound gratitude to our guest speaker, Dr. Georgiana Gordon-Strachan, Director, Tropical Metabolism Unit, Caribbean Institute of Health Research, University of the West Indies. Now, Dr. Gordon-Strachan is my friend, and when I learned that she was going to be our guest lecturer, I was indeed very happy. And as expected, her lecture was informative, it was stimulating, it was well-researched, it was memorable. So thank you very much for delivering such an excellent lecture. Dr. Gordon-Strachan has shown us how climate change is a global health threat that affects all age groups, including babies, the elderly, and persons with disabilities. For those who recommended and contacted Dr. Gordon-Strachan, thank you. For those who posed questions to her and all the participants who joined us today, thank you. Now, Dr. Strachan has suggested strategies that we can implement to reduce the negative impact of climate change. We can increase the number of green spaces. We can set up surveillance systems to monitor temperature levels. We can develop occupational health safety laws. Our guest speaker has also suggested that we use this phenomenon as an opportunity. And for us Kiwanians, we have a global Kiwanian movement. And so we can lobby for the reduction of greenhouse gases. We can educate our fellow Kiwanians, our SLPs, the communities that we serve about the negative impact of climate change and how they can help with the reduction of that negative impact. And most importantly, as Dr. Gordon-Strachan recommended, we can all practice healthy lifestyles. So there's a lot more that she said, but I know it's getting late. And I just want us now to open our mics and give Dr. Gordon-Strachan one round of resounding applause to show our appreciation. So please. Thank you very much. Over to you, Prez.
Thank you very much, PE Aldry. Now in arms to impose some charges, we will start with our DP Claudette Carter, following DP Earl Spencer.
Good evening again, fellow Kiwanians and guests. And I will just begin with P.E. Aldry, because she is friends with Dr. Gordon-Strachan, but she hasn't yet shared her K. And so P.E. Aldry, you owe the Sarge $250 for that. Thank you very much. Yes. And I love when people are very proactive, like Director Nadia, who knew that I was going to find her for that wonderful lighting at Reggae on the Pier show. Our own Director Nadia did all that lighting, and she paid without my uttering a word. So wonderful. I haven't seen VP Erica in a while, another friend of Dr. Gordon-Strachan, who has not invited her to our meetings. But I saw a singer, a backup singer for Beres Hammond at Reggae on the Pier, and she looked very much like Erica. Now, if it's not Erica, Erica will still have to pay for my even thinking that it could be Erica. So either way, Erica needs to pay the Sarge $250 for that. And did I spot Hope McNeish in the crowd at Reggae on the Pier? Remember, she's a member of Jaria and all of that and all things reggae. So I think that Hope has to pay me $250 for that. Okay. Also, Hope has been organizing the trivia competition. So please don't be afraid to sign up. I don't think you'll end up like St. Andrew Technical on Schools Challenge recently. So please take a chance and participate in that competition. Okay? If you are not part of the competition and you're not part of the organizing committee, you owe the Sarge $250. That should cover just about everybody. Okay? All three of our 4 Judiths were very active last weekend. Zoom was at Martha's house feeding, and then she went to visit about 3 or 4 Kiwanians after that. The entire Saturday was spent doing Kiwanis stuff. Such energy. And after the tree climbing of the previous week, Zoom, I mean, your energy knows no bounds. Then, of course, there was Judith Henry with the Din Din, Sunday Din Din, and Judith Douglas, who I understand also did some deliveries. So I don't know if she rode a bike, but all three Judiths need to pay the Sarge $250 each. And Judith Douglas, who seems to be sharing her link with Jeannie and Eleanor, I'm sure there's wine involved. So those two need to pay the Sarge as well. DM Pauline Bowler, and was with our special people at Martha's house. And so everybody who was there with her, VP Sophia, DP Audrey, and two others I can't identify because of the masks, but they know themselves and they owe the Sarge as well. And pride of place goes to co-chair Larice, who got a hug this week from the LGE Sharon. And she thinks that the easing of the sanctions means that she can get hugs and kisses as she did previously. So Tricia and Sharon, I think you need to go, if you suddenly lose taste or smell, go get yourselves tested. And in addition, Larice was also trying to suggest that she was at Reggae on the Pier by posting a picture of herself hugging Taros Riley. I want you to know that Larice's grandson was about 7 years old in that picture, and he's now a teenager. So it could not have been last weekend. Larice, I think you need to pay me about $500. Okay?
That was at our club meeting in 2019. You hear that picture? 2018, that picture was taken.
2018. Thank you very much, DP Sandra, and for always knowing what's going on. Please pay the Sarge $250. Thank you. Now I just added some global warming notes. You know it's real when your best parking place is in the shade and not necessarily near to where you're going. You go outside, but your shadow stays inside. You realize that asphalt has a liquid state. You see birds use potholders to pull worms out of the ground. Chickens are laying hard-boiled eggs, and you no longer associate bridges or rivers with water. Thank you very much, President.
Thank you. DP Earl?
Well, I can say that the other Sarge has monitored her team so well. I've been looking through my list, and there are not as many as, boy, the ladies always crowd us out. But I'm not going to penalize our guys too much, our Kiwanians. And after such a serious discussion and expose by DP Claudette, I'm just going to put some light humor. And no new jokes are really around, but people have different versions. And I have two little ones for you tonight. I know that Ralston is hurting for a fine. That's fine with me. Anyway, this one is about painting the church. They had this little Scotchman who is named Smokey McGregor. He was very interested in making a penny anywhere he could, and he often thinned down his paint to make it go a wee bit further. As it happened, he got away with this for some time. Eventually, the local church decided to do a big restoration job on the outside of one of their biggest buildings. Smokey put in a bid, and because his price was so low, he got the job. So he set about erecting the scaffolding and setting up the planks and buying the paint, etc. And, of course, thinning it down with turpentine. Well, Smokey was up on the scaffolding, painting away, the job nearly completed, when suddenly there was a tremendous thunder. It was horrendous. The skies opened, and the rain poured down, washing the thin paint from all over the church, knocking Smokey clear of the scaffolding and landed him on the lawn among the gravestones, surrounded by telltale puddles of thinned paint. Smokey was no fool. he knew he had committed a big sin and judgment from the Almighty was on his way. So he got down on his knees and said, oh God, forgive me. What should I do? And from the thunder, a mighty voice spoke, repent, repent, and sin no more.
Father Jackson shall hear about this one.
Well, and I hope he's not using sinner in his faith.
Oh my God.
And I know you won't forget what you just heard, but I need to wrap it up because with this other little one, it takes you back to school. You always hear about little Johnny, right? Anyway, in class one day, Mr. Johnson pulled little Johnny over to the desk after a test and said, Johnny, I have a feeling you have been cheating on your tests. Johnny was astounded and asked Mr. Johnson to prove it. Well, said Mr. Johnson, I was looking over your test and the question was, who was our first president? I didn't tailor it to Jamaica. And the little girl that sits next to you, Mary, she put George Washington, and so did you. So everyone knows he was the first president, said little Johnny, with his little innocent eyes open large. Just wait a minute, Mr. Johnson says. The next question was, who freed the slaves? Mary put Abraham Lincoln, and so did you. Well, I read the history book last night, and I remembered that, said Johnny. Wait. The next question was, who was the president during the Louisiana Purchase? Mary put, I don't know. And you wrote, me neither. That's it.
$10,000 charge, $10,000 DPR.
Hello. Are we supposed to?
Thank you. Thank you very much, DP Earl. I know you're right. Or President Paul, the program.
Yes, thank you very much, President Janil. Yes, at this time we'll have our notices and announcement, and I call on Secretary DLG Willie, followed by Secretary Theon from the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston. You're muted, DLG Willie. Yes, DLG Willie, you can go ahead.
Thank you, President Paul. Notices and announcements for this week. Very short. As a reminder, on Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, GDF, Officers Club Upper Camp, we'll be having our awards and Legion of Honor presentation starting at 9 o'clock. Letters of invitation have been sent out. Everybody have been informed. DP Stewart is now waiting on responses to confirm the numbers. Just a reminder, on Saturday, March 26th is our second quarter DCM. And make a note in your diaries if you have not done so already. District Convention in Fredericktown, Nova Scotia, August 19th to 21st. And so far as interclubbing opportunities, I've just noted one for North St. Andrew on Thursday. I'll be sending out a schedule and I will go out tomorrow afternoon. That is the notice and interclubbing opportunity. For now, President Paul, I now turn over to Secretary Theon. Secretary Theon.
Hi, good evening, Kiwanians and guests. Notices. I will continue with notices from Kiwanis Club of New Kingston. The LG leadership training will be on March 5th between hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. I encourage all Kiwanians to register for this training so that you are able to participate. We have launched the Skip a Meal charity program. This year, you will have an opportunity to donate to assist our own case sisters who are struggling financially. Please get your sponsorship sheets or make your contribution of a minimum of $500. Builders Club Week will be between March 21st to the 25th. Plans and the schedule for the week will be circulated soon. The interclub schedule will be shared momentarily, and please take note of the committee activities shared in the bulletin. These are the notices. Hand over back to the president.
Yes, thank you very much, Secretary DLG Willie and Secretary Theon, for bringing us the notices. We'll have the thought for the week, and I call on DP Stewart.
Thank you, President Paul. I just have two short ones. First one is hundreds of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. And the second one is, in times of change, learners inherit the earth. Over to you, President Paul.
Yes, thank you very much, DP Stewart. Well, what can I say? It has been a very good meeting, very informative. And of course, I want to thank all the participants and also our daughters and ladies of the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston for joining with us this evening for a regular club meeting. I'm going to ask that we all raise a toast to Kiwanis International and to Jamaica land we love.
Kiwanis International, Jamaica land we love.
This joint meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston
and New Kingston
is now terminated at 8:36 p.m.
And we love.
Thank you. Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you, President Paul. Have a wonderful remainder of the week.
Good evening, fellow Kiwanians.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Stay for the music.
That